I can't believe you would do this after everything!
Hello, everyone. Today I want to share with you the story of Piper Chudri, a woman who seemed ordinary at first glance. She wasn't chasing the spotlight, nor was she the kind of employee people whispered about in boardrooms. Piper was steady, reliable, the kind of person who quietly held things together. But sometimes, life pushes the quiet ones into the very heart of chaos. And that's exactly what happened to Piper. A sudden call from human resources on what should have been a normal morning changed everything. That single moment pulled her into a web of power struggles, betrayal, and a fight for truth that would decide not only her career, but the safety of countless others. This is more than an office story. It's about courage, integrity, and the cost of speaking up when silence seems safer. And it all began on that morning when Piper walked into HR's office, unaware her life was about to change. The first sound wasn't her voice. It was the deliberate slide of a folder across a table, the kind of movement that carried more judgment than words ever could. Iris, our human resources manager, adjusted her blazer as if the air itself had wrinkled it. Her expression was perfectly neutral, professional to the point of sterility, but her tone betrayed something colder. We need to discuss your inappropriate comment about the regional director during yesterday's conference call, she said, each word sharpened like glass. My name is Piper Chudri. Until that moment, I had thought of myself as a quiet cog in a very large machine. I wasn't ambitious, not particularly remarkable, just reliable. But sitting there in the suffocating HR office, staring across the table at Iris, I felt as though the floor beneath me had tilted. What comment? I asked, genuinely confused. I had barely spoken during that call. She didn't answer. Instead, she placed a transcript in front of me. The words were highlighted in neon yellow, leaping from the page with venom I couldn't recognize as my own. Crude, sexually explicit remarks about Director Preston's physical appearance. I couldn't help but recoil, as if the paper itself were toxic. This wasn't me, I said quickly, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. I would never say something like this. Iris tapped a perfectly manicured nail against the highlighted lines. 3 separate senior staff members reported hearing you say these exact words during the 3-minute technical glitch when the video feed dropped, but the audio remained active. Unfortunately, the recording is corrupted. That's fairly conclusive. Piper? My chest tightened, breath shallow. I knew what this was. It was too neat, too perfectly timed. My supervisor, Thora, had been undermining me for months. Now her circle of loyalists had found the perfect weapon. A lie so vile, it would end my career in one stroke. The door swung open without a knock, breaking the oppressive silence. Iris jolted upright like a soldier caught off duty. In walked Evan Reiner, the CEO and founder of our company. His presence filled the room in a way that wasn't about volume, but gravity. Even the air seemed to realign around him. Sir, we're in the middle of a disciplinary, Iris began, her voice trembling in spite of herself. Actually, he said, his tone quiet but commanding, we need to talk about something else entirely. The color drained from Iris's face. She slid the transcript back toward her side of the table, as if even touching it now might burn her. Evan took the seat beside me, Not across, not behind the desk where executives usually perched, but beside me. Miss Chudri has been working directly with my office for the past month, he said evenly. My mind raced. That wasn't true. I hadn't spoken to him once, not directly. Yet here he was, aligning himself with me in front of HR. My hands trembled under the table, hidden from view. I'm not sure I understand, Iris stammered. You will, Evan replied. Then he turned to me. Piper, would you mind waiting outside for a moment? And please, call Lane from legal. Tell him it's time for what we discussed. I stood on unsteady legs, nodding as if I knew exactly what he meant. The door clicked shut behind me. Through the frosted glass, I saw shadows shift, Evan leaning forward, Iris shrinking back. I pressed my phone to my palm, my thoughts a storm. Who was Lane? What discussion? Why me? As I stood in the hallway, I realized this wasn't just about an HR accusation. Something larger was unfolding, something hidden beneath layers of corporate decorum. And somehow, impossibly, I was at its center. But to understand how I'd ended up there, you need to know what happened 3 months earlier, when my quiet, unremarkable career was jolted onto a path I had never expected. I had been a mid-level project manager, competent but invisible. My reviews always read the same: reliable, steady, dependable. The kind of employee companies rely on but rarely reward. I kept my head down, managed supply chains, and lived in the safe, gray zone of corporate life. Then came the announcement that changed everything. I was in the cafeteria when the division head called for everyone's attention. He spoke with practiced enthusiasm, his voice bouncing off sterile walls. We've selected Piper Chudri to lead our company's expansion into Asian markets. The words landed like a thunderclap. Conversations halted. Forks clinked against plates. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me in disbelief. The most shocked, however, was Thora, my supervisor. Thora had been lobbying for her protégé Willa to get the position. She had cultivated relationships for years, maneuvering like a chess master. And yet, the board had chosen me. Piper's innovative approach to European regulatory challenges impressed us, the division head continued. We believe she'll bring that same creativity to Asia. I can still picture Thora's smile, thin and brittle, like a porcelain plate about to crack. To everyone else, it looked like congratulations. To me, it felt like a warning. Later that afternoon, she cornered me in the break room. She stirred her tea with unnecessary force, her eyes locked on me like a hawk sizing up prey. You've been here 6 years, she said. I've invested 15. This project is too important for experiments with unproven talent. I understand your concerns, I replied carefully, though my stomach nodded. I've already begun researching the regulatory landscape. Research? She interrupted with a dismissive laugh. Darling, business in Asia isn't about research. It's about relationships. Relationships Willa and I have cultivated for years while you shuffled supply chains in Detroit. The message was clear. I had stepped onto her battlefield. What followed was a slow war of attrition. Every meeting became a minefield. Every email, a test. Her circle, Willa, Devon, Kenzie, closed ranks, starving me of crucial information. excluding me from conversations that shaped decisions I was expected to defend. Yet I pressed on. I spent nights poring over regulatory codes, consumer trends, and safety laws in Japan, Taiwan, South Korea. What I discovered was alarming. Our flagship flame-retardant product would fail critical safety regulations in 3 of those countries. To fix it would mean an 8-month delay and millions in redesign. When I brought my findings to Thora, carefully documented, she barely glanced at them. "Those regulations are flexible," she said flatly. "Continue as planned." It was more than politics now. It was about human lives, and Thora wanted them brushed aside. That was when I first realized this wasn't just a rivalry. It was a fight for something larger, something dangerous. The deeper I sank into the project, the clearer the picture became. I had not simply been promoted into a role. I had been placed inside a battlefield where alliances mattered more than truth, and where silence was often rewarded more than integrity. Thora's circle wasn't merely competitive. It was fortified like a fortress. Willa, with her polished charm. Devon, her strategist in shadow. Kenzie, the quiet enforcer who controlled information flow. Each of them acted like pieces of a machine designed to push me out. It started small. Missing attachments in emails, meeting invites forgotten, updates circulated, but sent only to certain people. The kind of sabotage subtle enough to look like oversight, yet frequent enough to erode confidence. If you've ever worked in an office where politics dictated survival, you'll recognize this choreography of exclusion. Studies from the Harvard Business Review show that 58% of employees who challenge superiors on ethical grounds face retaliation within 6 months. I didn't know the statistic at the time, but I could feel it in my bones. Still, I persisted. I dug deeper into the regulatory frameworks of Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea. I discovered that our product line, the flame-retardant building material meant to revolutionize construction, didn't meet key safety standards. In Taiwan, the flame spread rating failed by 30%. In Japan, toxicity tests showed dangerous fumes when exposed to heat. In South Korea, the durability tests collapsed under prolonged stress. This wasn't just paperwork. These were risks that could mean collapsed schools, burning apartment complexes, families destroyed. I presented my findings with caution, careful to balance the technical with the urgent. Thora barely skimmed the documents. "These things are negotiable," she said, as though life and death could be bartered. "Our local partners know how to smooth the way." Her dismissal struck something raw inside me. "These aren't suggestions," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "They're laws. They exist because of past disasters." She stirred her tea again, that same mechanical movement, as though I were a stubborn child. "Piper, optimism is necessary in business. Sometimes the details get sorted out along the way." But these weren't details. They were lives. A week later, my car windshield bore a plain white note. "Some careers end before they begin. Know when to keep quiet." I sat there for nearly an hour, gripping that thin sheet of paper, wondering how far this had already gone. Had someone followed me to the garage? Did they know where I lived? Fear has a way of hollowing you out, of making you doubt even your own footsteps. That night, I called the only person I trusted completely, my younger sister, Zoe. She was a nurse, practical, no nonsense, and fiercely protective. I spilled everything. The regulations ignored, the sabotage, the note on my car. She listened without interrupting, then said in her steady voice, "You need to document everything. Emails, conversations, notes, recordings, if it's legal. Build your own armor." "And then what?" I asked, pacing my kitchen with a mug of untouched coffee. "Go to HR? They're in Thora's pocket." "Maybe not HR," Zoe replied. "Maybe hire. Someone who cares about liability." It sounded absurd. In companies like ours, hire often meant further away, insulated behind layers of bureaucracy. But her words stayed with me. Document everything. So I did. I began compiling a hidden record. Folders of emails showing deliberate omissions, voice memos of meetings where I was sidelined, photos of test results that contradicted public claims. Each piece felt like a brick, heavy in my possession but necessary to build something stronger than rumor. The pressure mounted. 2 weeks later, during a major conference call with Director Preston from Singapore, Thora made her boldest move yet. We were gathered in the main conference room, about 30 people between those present and those dialed in virtually. The screen flickered to life as Preston began asking about the timeline. Thora, with her usual glossy poise, walked him through a presentation that painted a picture of perfect progress. "And now," she said suddenly, "Piper will update us on the regulatory approval process." My stomach lurched. I hadn't been told I'd present. She had blindsided me deliberately, setting me up in front of international leadership. I stood, hands clammy, every eye drilling into me. "Thank you, Thora. While I haven't prepared slides, my research shows significant challenges we'll need to address before proceeding." Preston leaned forward, interest sharpening his tone. "What kind of challenges?" Before I could answer, the video feed went black. The audio remained. "Technical difficulties," Thora announced smoothly. "I'll take this one." Her voice filled the speakers. "The regulatory landscape is indeed complex, but we've accounted for all requirements. Everything is on schedule." It was a lie. I couldn't stay silent. "Director Preston," I said, my voice clear though my heart pounded. "Our current product formulation does not meet standards in Taiwan, Japan, or South Korea. The modifications required would delay our launch by at least 8 months." A stunned silence followed. Then Preston spoke again, his voice cutting. "I'd like to see both sets of test results." "Of course," Thora replied smoothly. "We'll send them over today." When the call ended, she cornered me by the water cooler. Her tone was ice. "What do you think you're doing?" "My job," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "And you know those tests haven't been superseded?" Something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, but calculation. "Not everyone is cut out for leadership," she said softly. "Decide carefully if you want to be part of this team's success." That night, at home, my partner Andy found me surrounded by printouts at the dining table. "You look terrible," she said, dropping her bag. "When did you last eat?" I pushed my hair back. "I think they're going to fire me." Andy pulled up a chair, her voice gentle but firm. Then let them. Find somewhere that values your integrity. But it wasn't that simple. A calendar invite had already appeared in my inbox. Meeting with HR, subject, performance concerns. Andy urged me to resign first. Twice I drafted resignation letters. Twice I deleted them. Something, call it stubbornness, call it conscience, kept me tethered. I couldn't walk away, not when lives were at stake. So I kept digging. Under the pretense of preparing market analysis, I requested access to files far beyond my scope. Most were denied, but the ones I managed to see were enough to paint a disturbing pattern. And then, buried deep inside a budget projection folder, I found it. A spreadsheet that froze me in my chair. It wasn't just negligence. It was intent. Calculations of how many consumer complaints, injuries, even potential deaths the company could absorb before profit margins were impacted. Human lives reduced to cost-benefit math. I printed the file, my hands shaking, then deleted it from my downloads immediately. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window watching the city lights flicker, thinking of families in high-rise apartments, children in schools, unaware that their safety had been weighed and discounted. By morning, I knew this was bigger than me, and if I stayed silent, I'd be complicit. The HR summons arrived like a final blow. A polite calendar notification, its subject line sterile but lethal. Performance concerns, mandatory attendance. I stared at the screen for a long time, the glow of my monitor reflecting against the uneaten toast on my desk. It was clear now. Thora's web was tightening. The fabricated comment, the whispers, the missing attachments. It was all designed to build a case, a trap that would collapse beneath me at the perfect moment. And yet, resignation still felt like betrayal, not of the company, but of the people who would one day walk into buildings lined with our material. Buildings that might burn faster than their occupants could escape. The spreadsheet I had discovered still haunted me. Black and white numbers calculating acceptable fatalities. It was the kind of document you'd expect in dystopian fiction, not corporate planning. But there it was, proof that safety had been reduced to arithmetic. I went into the HR office with my chest tight and my palms damp. Iris was already there, polished and poised, the transcript of the supposed inappropriate comments neatly printed on the table. She slid it toward me as though she were handing down a sentence. I didn't need to read it again. The words were venomous, vile, and designed to stick to me like tar. This wasn't just termination, it was character assassination. If I were branded as someone who made those remarks, my career would end long before I could rebuild elsewhere. That was Thora's genius. She didn't just want me out. She wanted me discredited. And then the door opened. Evan Reiner, CEO and founder, walked in. I swear the temperature of the room dropped 10 degrees. Iris straightened instantly, her authority dissolving like sugar in hot tea. Evan didn't even glance at her. He looked directly at me. Miss Chudri has been working directly with my office for the past month, he said, seating himself beside me. It was a lie. I hadn't exchanged a single direct word with him. But in that moment, it became truth. His presence shielded me like a wall of glass between me and a firing squad. Iris's lips pressed together, pale as paper. She tried to stammer a protest, but Evan's voice cut clean through the air. "Piper, would you step outside for a moment? And call Lane. Tell him it's time." I walked out of that office trembling, my body moving on autopilot. Who was Lane? What did "it's time" mean? The frosted glass blurred the figures inside, Evan leaning forward, Iris shrinking back. For the first time in weeks, it wasn't me cornered against the wall. Moments later, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Miss Chudri, this is Lane Perkins from Legal. The CEO asked me to contact you. Please meet me in conference room E immediately." Conference room E was tucked away on the executive floor, a place I had never dared venture. When I entered, a tall woman with close-cropped silver hair stood examining a stack of documents. She extended her hand. "Lane Perkins, Corporate Legal. I understand you've uncovered something significant about our Asian market expansion." My mouth went dry. I haven't spoken to the CEO about any of this." Lane gave a small smile. "No, but someone else has. Someone who's been watching closely." The door opened again. Melissa from accounting slipped inside, her arms cradling a thick folder. Melissa, the quiet woman I had barely spoken to in 6 years, the one who ate lunch at her desk and never raised her voice in meetings. She set the folder down with care. "Sorry I'm late. Had to wait until Thora left for lunch to access the rest of the files." I blinked at her, bewildered. "You're involved in this?" Lane answered for her. "Melissa is our internal auditor for compliance issues. She reports directly to the board, not to management. She's been monitoring irregularities in the safety testing budget for months." Melissa's voice was steady, calm. "When you were appointed to lead the expansion, I hoped you'd see what was happening. And you did. That spreadsheet you found, that was the final piece." I felt my head spin. "How did you know I found it?" Melissa adjusted her glasses. "We track file access. At 11:42 p.m. 2 nights ago, you opened the document and spent 18 minutes on it before printing. That was enough confirmation." Lane slid a paper toward me. "This is a whistleblower protection agreement. By signing, you'll have legal immunity, continued employment regardless of outcomes, and the backing of the board." I stared at the paper, my pulse hammering. Even with protection, I knew what awaited me. Thora had allies woven into every corner of the company. If she wasn't stopped completely, my work life would become a siege. "She'll find a way," I whispered. Lane's expression didn't change. "Or she won't. The board has authorized a complete restructuring of the division. But first, we need irrefutable evidence. Evidence that can withstand scrutiny not just internally, but externally. Regulators, courts, media, if necessary." Melissa opened her folder, spreading out documents like a grim mosaic. Emails, budget drafts, safety test results altered between versions. And there, unmistakably, chains of correspondence with Thora's name in the sender field. "Evidence," Melissa said simply. The air in the room felt heavy, charged. As the plan unfolded, I felt both dread and relief wash over me. Dread for the confrontation to come. Relief that I was no longer alone. For weeks, I had been carrying the weight of truth in isolation. Now, it was shared. Still, a voice inside whispered doubts. What if Thora's influence shielded her? What if the board turned its fury not on her, but on me? Whistleblowers don't always win. According to U.S. Labor Department data, less than 22% of whistleblowers retain their positions after exposing corporate misconduct. Most end up blacklisted, careers shattered. But then I remembered the spreadsheet, the numbers, the silent math of lives lost for profit. And I realized something. Even if I lost everything, silence would cost more. So, with hands trembling, but resolve hardening, I picked up the pen and signed my name. Good, Lane said softly, folding the paper. Now we begin. 3 hours later, I stood in the back of the boardroom, hidden among the shadows of mahogany paneling and frosted glass, my heart pounding like a drumline. The room itself was designed to impress. A table longer than some apartments, 12 leather chairs circling it like thrones, and walls lined with abstract art meant to convey innovation. Yet beneath the polish, the air crackled with tension. Thora entered with the confidence of a queen walking into court. Her cream-colored suit was immaculate, her hair perfectly styled, her smile rehearsed to project calm dominance. Behind her, Devon and Willa followed, carrying their laptops and stacks of reports like faithful attendants. To any outsider, they were a picture of corporate excellence. To me, they were conspirators. Thank you for accommodating the schedule change, Thora said smoothly, arranging her materials with military precision. I know everyone's time is valuable. I felt almost sorry for her. Almost. Before she could launch into her presentation, Graham, the chairman of the board, cleared his throat. Before we begin, I'd like to note some additional attendees today. Thora's smile flickered. 3 figures sat quietly at the far end of the table. Mr. Tanaka from the Japanese Regulatory Commission, Ms. Chen from Taiwan's Building Materials Safety Board, and Mr. Park from South Korea's Consumer Protection Agency. International regulators. The very people whose approval Thora's team had assumed would be a formality. I watched color drain from her face so gradually it was almost imperceptible, but her voice didn't falter. What a wonderful surprise, she said, nodding with feigned enthusiasm. Your insights will be invaluable. She connected her laptop to the projector, launching into her deck with the confidence of someone who had weathered 1,000 presentations. Graphs of ascending revenue lines, slides filled with glossy marketing promises. Our projections indicate a 30% market penetration within 18 months, she declared, with minimal adaptation costs. Excuse me, Ms. Chen interrupted, adjusting her glasses. These projections assume immediate regulatory approval in all target markets. What is your timeline for completing safety certifications? Thora's voice wavered only slightly. We anticipate expedited approvals based on our North American certifications. Interesting, Mr. Park murmured, his tone ice-cold. Considering the significant differences between North American and Asian flame retardant standards, the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Thora clicked frantically through her slides. Perhaps I should skip ahead to our compliance strategy. She didn't get the chance. Lane Perkins rose from her seat, tablet in hand. Before you continue, I believe we should address some discrepancies in the materials presented. Evan, the CEO, nodded from his place at the head of the table. Please proceed, Ms. Perkins. Thora froze, her hand gripping the clicker like a lifeline. Evan's voice had cut through the air like steel, giving her no room to maneuver. Slowly, she disconnected her laptop. Lane's device took over the screen. The first document displayed was the spreadsheet I had discovered, projected in all its damning detail. Rows and columns calculating how many injuries, how many deaths the company could absorb before regulatory penalties outweighed profit margins. This, Lane said calmly, is not a projection of compliance. It is a strategy to circumvent safety standards in Asian markets by using non-compliant materials. It explicitly calculates acceptable casualties. Gasps rippled through the room. Mr. Tanaka leaned forward, his face grave. There must be some mistake, Thora said quickly. I've never seen this document before. Lane swiped to the next screen, an email chain with Thora's name in the sender field, discussing how to manage test results that didn't meet standards. This can't be authentic. Thora's voice rose, her poise unraveling. Someone has manipulated these emails. Lane didn't flinch. The metadata and server logs confirm their authenticity, as do sworn statements from 3 members of your team who have come forward in exchange for immunity. Thora's head snapped toward Devon and Willa. Devon dropped his gaze to the table, shame burning across his face. Willa met her eyes defiantly. In that moment, I understood. Willa had been the first to break ranks. Lane continued, slide after slide, peeling back layers of deceit. Budget manipulations, falsified safety reports, recordings of meetings where regulations were dismissed as negotiable. The evidence piled higher with each passing minute. Regulators spoke, their voices sharp. Ms. Chen, had these products entered our markets, the consequences could have been catastrophic. Schools, hospitals, entire families at risk. Mr. Park, this is criminal negligence masquerading as strategy. The board members looked horrified. Graham, the chairman, spoke slowly. Miss Thora, this behavior represents neither our values nor our standards. Security will escort you, Devon, and Kenzie to collect your belongings. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. The silence afterward was suffocating. Thora opened her mouth as if to protest, but Evan's voice cut in with finality. That won't be necessary. And then, unexpectedly, Willa stood. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. I participated under pressure. That doesn't excuse me, but I want to acknowledge that Piper raised these safety issues repeatedly, and she was systematically blocked. All eyes turned to me at the back of the room. My throat tightened. The chairman cleared his throat. Miss Chudri, would you step forward, please? The 30 feet to the front of the room felt like miles. My legs threatened to give way, my pulse loud in my ears. I stood before the board, facing not just them, but the regulators, the CEO, the wreckage of Thora's downfall. In light of what we've learned, Graham said. The board would like to offer you the position of Vice President of International Compliance and Product Safety. A new role reporting directly to the board. Your integrity has been noted and valued. Applause broke out, polite but genuine. My mind reeled. Hours earlier, I had expected termination. Now I was being handed a role that didn't even exist until this very moment. Behind me, Thora's eyes burned with fury as security approached. In that glance, I saw it all. 15 years of ambition crumbling, reputation collapsing in a single hour. For once, I didn't look away. When the boardroom emptied and the last echo of footsteps faded, I stood frozen in place, my hand still clutching the edge of the long oak table. Hours ago, I had walked into HR expecting humiliation and dismissal. Now, I had walked out of the same building with a title I had never dreamed of. Vice President of International Compliance and Product Safety. It felt less like a promotion and more like an earthquake, shifting the very ground beneath me. Lane entered the quiet room, her expression softer now that the battle was over. She slid into a chair across from me and exhaled slowly. Quite a day, she said. I let out a laugh that cracked into something closer to a sob. Did you know the board would offer me that position? She shook her head. That was their decision, but the right one. What happens now? I asked. Beyond termination, the board has authorized full cooperation with international regulators. Criminal charges are very possible. She paused, her silver hair catching the light. And as for you, you're tasked with rebuilding everything Thora tried to destroy. New compliance channels, whistleblower protections, transparency protocols. The work begins now. It sounded overwhelming, but also necessary, maybe even redemptive. 3 weeks later, I settled into my new office. The nameplate on my desk gleamed under the morning light. Piper Chudri, VP of International Compliance. I still reached for my old ID badge sometimes, forgetting I no longer belonged to that mid-level anonymity. My days became a blur of drafting protocols, meeting with regulators, and setting up anonymous reporting systems. I made a promise. No one else in this company would ever face what I had faced alone. Then, one afternoon, my assistant appeared at the door. There's someone here to see you. Says it'll only take 5 minutes. I sighed, glancing at the clock. Fine. 5 minutes. Thora walked in, but she wasn't the woman I remembered. Her hair was pulled back in a careless knot. Her once flawless suit rumpled as though she'd slept in it. She sank into the chair opposite me, no longer regal, no longer untouchable. Just a person hollowed out by consequence. They're investigating me for criminal negligence, she said flatly. My reputation is gone. 15 years of work, destroyed? I didn't answer. Silence can sometimes say more than words. You could speak for me, she pressed. Tell them I was just aggressive about deadlines, not deliberately ignoring safety. That would be a lie, I said calmly. The spreadsheet with acceptable casualties, it was signed off under your direction. She slumped, eyes hollow. What do you want? Money? An apology? I don't want anything from you, Thora, I replied. The truth came out. That's enough. Her voice cracked into a whisper. "You've ruined me." I leaned forward, my voice steady but not unkind. "No. You ruined yourself the moment you decided profit margins were worth more than human lives." She left without another word, the sound of the door closing like the end of a chapter. 6 months later, our fully compliant building materials entered Asian markets with the highest safety ratings in the industry. The additional research had cost millions, but as Evan said during the launch celebration, integrity isn't expensive. It's priceless. Regulators who had witnessed Thora's downfall became our strongest allies, guiding us through approvals with a respect no amount of lobbying could have purchased. I established quarterly compliance audits with independent reviewers. I created anonymous hotlines where employees could report misconduct without fear. And every time I reviewed a report, I thought of Zoe's words that night in my kitchen. Document everything. Build your armor. One afternoon, as the anniversary of the boardroom showdown approached, an email appeared in my inbox from an unfamiliar address. It contained only one line. "You were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry." No signature was needed. I knew it was Thora. That evening, Andy and I sat at our kitchen table with glasses of wine, a quiet celebration of survival and new beginnings. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly. All the stress, the fear, the uncertainty. I thought of the children in schools built with safer materials, of the employees who now felt free to speak up, of the young woman I had been, terrified, cornered, and tempted to stay silent. "Every moment," I replied. "Some fights are worth having, even when you're not sure you'll win." Thora eventually found work at a small consulting firm. Her power was gone, her reputation permanently scarred. Devon left the industry entirely. Willa, having cooperated with investigators, rebuilt her career in quality assurance at a competitor. Her story became a cautionary tale she shared openly, a reminder of what silence and complicity can cost. As for me, I learned that doing the right thing rarely feels heroic in the moment. It feels terrifying, lonely, risky. But looking back, it is the only choice that allows you to live with yourself. So if you've ever wondered whether to speak up against wrongdoing, know this: your voice matters more than you think. Silence protects no one, least of all yourself. Remember, in the battle between profit and principle, even one voice can tip the balance. Piper's journey reminds us that in life, there are moments when we must choose. Stay silent to protect ourselves, or speak out to protect what's right. It's never an easy choice, but it can shape not only our own destiny, but also the lives of those around us. Thank you so much for watching this story until the end. I wish you and your family good health, happiness, and strength in facing your own challenges. And if you found this story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this.